Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Live Boldly with Sara. Today I have Laura Rhodes-Levin on. Super excited about this episode because we're going to be diving into, okay, ready for this? Anxiety, something that so many of us struggle with every single day. Those feelings of maybe imposter syndrome, how am I going to get through this? All of the things that sometimes you might find holding you back. And then we're also going to be talking about something which I'm super excited about. It's actually a topic also that my clients really struggle with is having peace and not feeling guilty about it or shame-filled over having peace within our own life. So welcome to the show, and I would love for you to introduce yourself.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, super excited.
Okay, introduce myself. I am Laura Rhodes-Levin, author of the book, The Missing Piece, Rewire Your Brain, Reduce Anxiety, and Recreate Your Life. And I'm also the founder of the Missing Piece Center for Anxiety and the Few Foundation, a charity for mental health for people who don't have insurance for comprehensive mental health or who get thrown out by their insurance because they think they should be better in 30 days from a lifetime of trauma. And let's just start with that.
I love that. Like you're supposed to be okay after 30 days. So lifetime of trauma myself, and it's a forever healing journey. It's a forever diving in personal development and, really creating that life that you ultimately want on the other side of it. So 30 days, give me a break. I wish.
Right?
No such thing as the 30-day fix it. It ain't happening. So tell us about, how did you get into the work of anxiety though? Like, let's dive into the precipice behind it, like the cause. Let's talk about like what made you decide to dive into that piece.
Absolutely. Well, I had tremendous anxiety from the time I was a little girl. Uh, I think there's a bear in the closet. Why? I don't know. And I suffered with a lot of social anxiety, all the things you were talking about, fraud syndrome, et cetera, et cetera. I tried drugs and alcohol. That did not do me well. I've been sober for 18 years. The reason I founded my center is, and even though I think I'm a good therapist and all our therapists are good, it takes more than flour to make cake. If your dog is stressed out, you don't sit the dog down and be like, what triggered you, Fluffy? Let's talk about it. Talk therapy is wonderful, but most of trauma anxiety has to do with a connection to your body and learning how to calm yourself down. And we hear about little snippets of it: aromatherapy, massage, movement, breathing, neurofeedback's a very powerful tool for mitigating anxiety. But when you put all these things together at the same time and you let someone experience hours and hours a week of feeling calm and in their bodies and enough to actually approach their problems with clarity and not being emotionally hijacked, then you've got a real formula to create a completely different life. Because we all have anxiety. Anxiety is actually a necessary component to our survival. But everything has just become so exacerbated and hate fueled and fear fueled that we're all just and most of the time, if you look around you, wherever you are, you're probably okay. It's
Right.
just where your head is taking you that is so frightening. And so it's a lot of my work is about being inside yourself and being okay, knowing how to be okay physically, and then rethinking your worst case scenario go to for dealing with problems,
Right, right.
if that makes sense.
Do you like the fact that I have my cat in here
I
right
was just
now?
going to say, hello, you
I
pussycat.
know, I know. Like animals are huge, by the way, for helping
They
with anxiety.
are.
They're huge for helping with anxiety. So you just said something though that's interesting. You said anxiety is necessary for living. It's like necessary within our life. Tell us more about that.
So if I don't think we all really understand what anxiety is.
Yeah,
Anxiety
let's dive into that. Yes.
It's part of your fight flight syndrome in your amygdala, in your limbic system, which is a totally more primitive part of your brain than your frontal cortex. And your amygdala is there to detect danger. And every time you detect a real danger, like, uh, I hope people, your listeners, haven't heard me say this before because I get sick of saying it myself. But if you're a child and you're playing in the meadow with your friends and you hear a rustle in the bush and you see this big fuzzy face and it eats your friend and you just met a lion for the first time, that goes into the amygdala and it registers there and it stays there. Because if you hear a rustle in the bush again and you see the fuzzy face, you run, right? So anxiety is really important. But the more and more lions you encounter, whether it's real trauma or perceived trauma that we've been through with the pandemic, with the political zeitgeist, that amygdala becomes so overwhelmed that now you hear a rustle in the bush and you're gone. It could be a bunny. It could be the wind. But suddenly you find yourself not driving against the wall on the freeway, not wanting to go out as much, having social anxiety. And so what happens is our anxiety ends up hijacking our logical thinking. And by calming down the emotion center of your brain, you then change your neural pathways to stop thinking everything is a lion. Did that make sense?
100% it makes sense. Absolutely,
Great.
it makes sense. Is anxiety, though, different than fear? Does it register differently in the body?
I think it's in the same family, right? When you have anxiety, when you have fear, cortisol and adrenaline are being dumped into your body because your body's assuming there's something you have to run from and you better gear up for it. Like, let's go, go, go. And unfortunately, what that leads to a lot is heightened blood pressure and stomach acid. So when you're experiencing anxiety on a chronic level, you're starting to get IBS, eating issues, nausea, migraines. And people come into the center with all these issues. And it's so hard for them to believe that aromatherapy and sound baths and art therapy and is going to repair their tummies, but and their heads. But it really, and the worst thing is that the psychiatrists are throwing anxiety meds at people, which are benzodiazepines, and all they do is work temporarily. And then because they are an addictive substance, they start creating anxiety just so that you'll take it. It's called rebound anxiety. And so the last thing I want people to do is take Ativan, lorazepam, Xanax, any of the PANs, that you're just adding a problem to your problem.
Wow. So do you find that, or have you seen that because we are behind screens more and less physical touch, physical presence with everyone? I mean, this goes back to COVID, yes, but then it's also literally just because we have more screens in the world. And so we're not sitting with people and having conversations like we used to. We're doing it over text, without eyes, without touch, without intimacy. Do you find that because of that, that there's also more anxiety that's being driven because of this?
Well, you bring up an interesting point. So I don't know that necessarily me being on my phone is going to create anxiety for me. But when you talk about the lack of human connection, when we hug, when we laugh together, when we experience each other's energy, because energy is very real. I mean, duh, we are releasing dopamine, serotonin, gabapentin, oxytocin. These are all neurotransmitters that help us feel good.
Right.
So you kind of get a double whammy if you're experiencing anxiety through the screen. you're getting the cortisol and adrenaline, and you're depriving yourself of the feel good stuff that kind of off centers it
Mm-hmm.
or neutralizes it even.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I find that with me, the phone gives me anxiety. It just does. It's like, and it's the scroll method. It's the I do find that people compare, right? So it's that comparisonitis. I should be doing that. That person's doing that. Why am I not there? Right? Perhaps it's fear of missing out. It causes FOMO for a lot of people. And a lot of that causes more and more anxiety in our life. And so I was curious about that, what you have found. And I'm sure that many of the listeners can agree with that themselves.
Yeah. And one of the tools that I do use in talk therapy, and I hate that it sounds corny, but it's about becoming friends with your brain and really loving yourself so that when you are seeing the Joneses on TV, keeping up with them, or not TV, on your screens, on Facebook, on social media, that you're not being judgmental of yourself and your life and doing the comparison game, which is really, I think most of us know that so much of that stuff, no one posts when they're bored and anxious. They post when they're, at the beach or having a good time. It's such a tiny snapshot of what's going on. Um, and even just the phone, like text messaging has become this, you need to answer me right now. We're
Yes.
not like putting a letter on a pony and waiting 3 months for a return. Everything is right now. I have a friend who has a ringtone that says, "Your sister is calling. You do not have to answer the phone right now. Take in a deep breath and relax. Resume your day. You can answer this call later." And I just like laugh so hard because we put all these demands on ourselves and we have a lot of negative self-talk.
Mhm.
And believe it or not, part of it's primitive because being an outcast, it's one of the chapters in my books. Being an outcast used to mean you were going to die. If you were cast out of the cave, if you were not socially accepted, chances of survival were very small. So we have a biological need to fit in. The irony is that your special brand of self is exactly what the universe needs. We don't need, no offense, Tara Krantzes. We don't need 10 Laura Rhodes-Levins. We need you. We need
Mhm.
your special deliciousness. And every single person has that. And in our attempts to fit in and our need to be accepted and not rejected, we we dumb down our natural drivers, our natural inclinations to be with judgment. And we've
Right.
got to start talking to ourselves like, bring out you, bring out you. That's what the universe needs. And not everyone is going to gel with it, but the people who you want to gel with will.
Right. 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 Yeah. So how do you talk about your own user manual? Tell us
Mm-hmm.
about that.
So, for a while when I was writing the book, I called it the Anxiety User Manual because there's a difference. Like when you have a light go off in your car, if you don't know what it is, you're like, oh my God, what's going on? The car's about to explode. And really, it was cold the night before, and your tires lost a little bit of air, and you're fine. By the time the afternoon sun comes out, your tires are going to blow back up. And I feel like, we learn so many things in school that have nothing to do with how we operate on a personal level. There are so many things that set us off, like taking things personally or making assumptions about what other people are thinking, or we don't know that when we sleep, the last 2 hours of sleep, we're processing our stressors. So we wake up anxious and we don't know why. So the idea of the anxiety user manual is to understand how anxiety shows up in your body and what's the stuff you need to concern yourself with. And what's the stuff that's like, is it a weed in your garden or do you need a machete to like clear through all the chaos? We need to understand that. And so understanding your anxiety and how it operates for you makes such a difference in our peace of mind, our peace of inner peace.
Yeah. So I know a lot of people that have gone through, that are listening to this right now, that have gone through a lot of some really, really hard stuff in life. And the dysregulation that comes with that, which I didn't even understand what that was. When I first went through some of my hardest times and I couldn't understand why I was always feeling off. Like, you know, something would happen and my internal dialogue went straight to wanting to run, right? Wanting to flee because everything just seemed hard. If it was, even if it was something that was small and I